Hello, I'm so honored to speak to Rotary International members from more than 100 countries around the world. My name is Indira Lakshmanan, and I'm the Senior Executive Editor at National Geographic Media, where we focus our 134-year-old magazine, books, and digital and mobile storytelling on a handful of topics: animals, environment, history and culture, science, and travel. I've been asked today to talk specifically about how we report on the environment and why educating the public about what each of us can do to clean up the planet and reverse climate change matters so much. But first, I want to acknowledge a formative experience that helped set the course of my life and career. I'm grateful to Rotary for awarding me a scholarship many years ago to do graduate studies at Oxford University in England. There, I studied international relations and was exposed to students and ideas from around the world, which helped instill in me a mission to promote cross-cultural communication and understanding. I've always loved traveling to new places, meeting people from different cultures and telling their stories, and luckily for me, there's a career for that. It's called journalism. So straight after my Rotary scholarship, I got a summer job on the foreign desk at National Public Radio in Washington. A few months later, I went to Chile, where I spent the year as a freelance correspondent, chronicling the historic transition from military dictatorship to democracy. After a few years back in the U.S., covering everything from beauty pageants to child poverty in America, I was sent to Bosnia, where I bore witness to the horrors of modern-day genocide. I spent the next decade as a foreign correspondent in Asia and Latin America, reporting from the fall of the Taliban in Afghanistan to the Stalinist regime of North Korea, finding off-the-beaten-track stories from the Amazon to Borneo, and another decade covering U.S. elections and foreign policy. Now, as an editor at National Geographic, I get to help others tell stories about our big, beautiful world. I see the job of a journalist as shining light on problems, highlighting solutions, and creating accurate and compelling narratives that get audiences to pay attention to what really matters. And to understand societal problems and find solutions, we need to seek out both local and global perspectives. There's been a lot of good research done on how audiences respond to news about the environment. News tends to focus on the most sensational and dire headlines. It's so hot that polar ice caps are melting and the Arctic is burning. Rising sea levels will drown entire coastlines and island nations. Global food supply is in peril. Yet research clearly shows that apocalyptic storytelling further polarizes opposing camps on the climate debate and turns the vast majority of readers off by making them feel panicked and powerless to stop an inevitable collapse. So what's a better approach? Instead of using terms like climate emergency and leaving readers hopeless and paralyzed, journalists can use the same rigorous reporting standards to highlight how people around the world are responding to problems and how to replicate those fixes in our own backyards. Climate change, pollution, and food scarcity are not hopeless foregone conclusions, but challenges for which there are solutions. So what we try to do at National Geographic in our flagship English edition and dozens of foreign language editions around the world is storytelling with a purpose. We do tell the absolute unvarnished truth about climate and environmental threats. There's no sugarcoating, but at the same time, we link together environmental experts and enthusiasts to give audiences information and tools to make a difference. We've dubbed this new kind of environmental storytelling Planet Possible, and I want to tell you about it today. One of the first things we did along these lines was a really innovative flip cover issue, the first such magazine in National Geographic's history. In April 2020, we marked the 50th anniversary of Earth Day by doing our first ever flip cover. The first half of the magazine was how we saved the world. Flip it over, read it backwards, and it's how we lost the planet. The point about this issue was to show the case for and against and what we could do to actually make a change. We did show the possibility of catastrophe by 2070, 50 years later from now, and the way that we could have rising seas and rising temperatures. With our really unique National Geographic photography, we showed here a tourist at Chernobyl taking a selfie at the nuclear plant. This composite image overlays the radiation from contaminated material captured using a gamma camera. We also told the story of 8.8 million tons of plastic waste that enter our oceans every year, killing millions of marine animals. According to the worst case scenarios, if we don't rein in our fossil fuel usage and take drastic steps to limit warming temperatures, significant parts of the world will become uninhabitable. Hanoi, Manaus, Brazil, Doha, Qatar will all have hotter climates than anywhere now on Earth by 2070 if we don't take action. That change would come unequally, affecting the global south and developing world more. The same is true for sea level rise. But don't forget, we also presented the optimist's view, the notion that we have the technology and the tools already today to solve these problems, to feed the world, to provide energy for all, to prevent mass extinctions, and to begin to reverse climate change. On this map, we went into detail about how much is already being done to conserve species, replenish fisheries, sequester carbon, preserve biodiversity, protect oceans, and preserve land. This is a timeline of the last 50 years since the first Earth Day in 1970, showing that from bans on pesticides and environmentally destructive chemicals and restrictions on mining and logging to the recovery of keystone species and the development of electric vehicles and sustainable plant-based foods, a lot of progress really has been made. This is one of my favorite stories from that issue because it highlights the youth generation, which is not sitting around waiting for their elders to take action, but is taking the climate and how to reverse global warming into their own hands. You may recognize here Greta Thunberg of Sweden on the left, but there are many other faces who we represented in this story, including a young climate activist you probably don't know, Ghislaine Irakoze of Rwanda, who learned that discarded electronics create 50 million tons of landfill waste globally every year. So he created an app to connect consumers to recycling plants and personally helped redirect 460 tons of electronic waste to recycling sites in Kigali, Rwanda. He's one of thousands of young people around the world who aren't waiting for their elders to fix things. They've rolled up their sleeves to do it themselves. Now, you may know that on Instagram, National Geographic has 200 million global followers, making it one of the most widely seen social media sources in the world, and one that appeals especially to a younger generation determined to find solutions. We use this platform to connect with young people and let them share their own voices from around the world. One of our great centerfolds in this issue was about what you can do personally to help save the planet. And it gave all sorts of simple, everyday actions we can take, from using eco-friendly coffee filter pods to recycled paper products, from planting trees and gardens that attract and support pollinators, which are so crucial to all of our global food supply, and volunteering to clean up local creeks and waterways. I want to show you here an image of our Planet Possible topic page, and on it you can see that we have all sorts of helpful everyday stories about things you can do, from teaching your own kids the problem with fast fashion and how it harms the environment. We've also got stories about how small changes to your diet can make a huge difference to sustainability and the planet. Even stories about how you can brew a greener beer, because who knew, but beer brewing is actually really tough on the planet. We also have had an initiative underway for a few years now called Planet or Plastic, where we're trying to educate the public about the really insidious effects of plastic waste in our oceans and all over our world. Along with that, we've done educational stories about how carrying your own cutlery makes a difference, how you can limit in your own personal products the use of plastic. We highlighted the example of one California woman who is so careful with her zero waste lifestyle that the entirety of 2 years' worth of the very few unrecyclable, uncompostable items that she used, she can fit into a single jar. As part of our Planet Possible initiative, we made a video that in a really accessible way tells the story of 1.2 billion plastic toothbrushes in the United States and how that ends up in landfills every day. We also told a story about how each of us can take small steps to try to change that.
The answer? 3 to 4 months, at least according to the ADA. So with 300 million Americans, that's 1.2 billion toothbrushes being thrown away just in America. That's enough to wrap around the world 4 times. Now, let's look ahead.
If you're a designer, you have an absolute duty to design properly, especially if they're using plastics, because plastics might be cheap materials, but they actually have a very high impact on the environment. They're very expensive materials when you actually think of them in a holistic way.
Okay, so here's some options. We could use alternative materials. Bone, metal, recycled plastic, or bamboo could work. There are toothbrushes with replaceable heads, and then there's pig hair, which biodegrades, but it wouldn't be an option for vegans and people with certain religious beliefs. Lastly, chewing sticks created from the neem tree are a totally plastic-free option, but that would be a huge cultural shift. Change takes time, and because we've been using the same toothbrush design for about 70 years, maybe that time is now.
I also want to share with you our last October 2021 issue about the revolution in electric vehicles. What I like so much about this issue is that it goes in great detail into the technology that exists for planes and cars and how we can already make a huge difference and reduce fossil fuels if we make these on a mass scale. How green, how soon? And what is the future here? As the reporting shows, from electric cars to hydrogen-powered planes, the technology does exist for a cleaner future. But will governments, businesses, and individuals pay the price and make the trade-offs that will be necessary? I'd like to leave you with a question to ask yourselves. How will you contribute to preserving the planet for yourselves and the generations that follow? I hope you'll keep reading and educating yourselves and take some steps to make a difference for yourself and our planet. Thank you.